Get in my way. Bang, bang.
You know, we're really big man.
All right, we'll go ahead and call the April meeting of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority Board to order. Any staff or trustee addition or deletions to the agenda or consent agenda?
Staff has no additions or deletions, Mr. Chairman.
Here none, I'll entertain the motion to adopt the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion to second, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Public comments, Mr. Wolfen. We'll do 5 minutes of comments, we're gonna do it all at once instead of each individual. You gonna give me? Yes. ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it should all be in order so people can remember, but I appreciate the courtesy. I'd like to point out that in Columbia County, you and the college are the only ones that do it this way. I have a couple of things, the commercial office space lease agreement with I'll start with the consulting agreement with Powell Consulting, whoever that is. That agreement, it doesn't say what attorney drew it up. And I checked at the Department of State today, Mr. Chairman. The Powell Consulting is not listed with the Department of State. So is Powell what you were in the past, what they were in the past? But Powell Consulting is not, you can do it on the dawn because they just keep the clock on. But Powell Consulting is not listed. I asked for a copy of the recent contracts with Powell. Who they, like in everything in Columbia County, what's going on in the county, everything just automatically renewed to the lifetime of the person with a contract. And I believe that was Mr. Powell's contract, the last one I had was 2008-9. And it appeared that renewed every year. If you look at his contract, it doesn't even say what he does. So it just says services. I mean, if you read the contract, I don't know what he does. Does he do your audit? It used to be a date. That's not in there. And I would just like to know who wrote the contract. I would point out to you that when Mr. Cobalan was here, and then Mr. Field was here, there was some sort of comment on whatever contract there was, that it was met form, there were initials on the top. Now there's just nothing. This stuff just like falls out of the sky. It's like a rabbit through a looking glass. And if RKK is doing the contracts, then it needs to be on there, who does them. As far as the commercial space lease, are you renting an office building or a medical office building? Doesn't say who did that lease. My understanding, the Women's Center has always been a medical office building, not just an office building. I have no idea what the action is tonight. The exhibits are missing from the contract. That's not surprising, as lately everything comes in here at the 12th hour. I respectfully point out to you that I put in a public records request and I appreciate Dale's response. But Molly and Mike, the Mike of Molly and Mike said here at one of the meetings that he submitted 17 pages to Mr. Powell. I put in a public records request for that. Mr. Williams said he didn't have it. But with all due respect, if you send it to Mr. Powell, and maybe he didn't have it, he said he didn't, I presume he didn't, then Mr. Powell either had it. So the authority was responsible for sending the request to Mr. Powell, and he needed to respond. That wouldn't be the first time Mr. Powell has not responded. As far as, if you look at the commercial lease agreement with Molly and Mike or EMS Pals, it says on the contract that the people that signed the contract are answerable to the law of the authority. I know what the law of authority is. I mean, Easter is what law we look about Easter, the New Testament or the Old Testament. I mean, there's a bunch of laws that have to do with the Lakeshore Hospital Authority. And you know, if you're dealing with Ramadan, then it's the Quran. That's not the law of whatever the holiday is going on, it's specific. So that's just sloppy legal workmanship. I don't know what the law of the authority is. And it also said that they would go by the law of the authority and the mission and purpose. Well, I know if you look at the session laws, the word mission is not mentioned once in the law. So I don't know who made that up, because you can't tell by looking at the contract. But in the contract, there's not one word that says mission. It does say purpose. And purpose is throughout the contract, Mr. Chairman. I'll wrap this up. This is my last point. If Don goes off. And it's written in there. Section 16, passing authority. The members of the Lakeshore Hospital Authority of Columbia County are authorized to request by resolution, ... to levy a tax not to exceed 3 mills on all taxable property in the county for the purpose of maintenance and operation of the hospital and facilities and providing health care for the indigent residents of Columbia County. To me, that would be the purpose of this. And whatever's going on at that office building, my presumption is that's just to take care of the indigent residents of Columbia County. Because when I read the legislation, that's what that says. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to your responses. And Mr. Powell had something that is not on the Department of State.
Any other public comments?
Someone I'd like to address. Okay, just on the comments, I always hate to point out that people are wrong.
Oh, it's okay.
Powell Consulting is a registered DBA of Powell and Jones CPA's PA. Absolutely registered.
I looked it up, not there.
Well, I promise you that.
I'm not saying you're lying. I'm saying I looked it up and it's not there.
That you look properly. The contract that I submitted is one that I prepared. So it's very easy to find a contract for personal services on the internet, as you know. I've used it 10 times. And that's to say that any information that the Whites have given me has always been shared with Mr. Williams. Usually it's the other way around. It goes to him and he sends it to me. So there's nothing that Lakeshore didn't receive that I received.
Thank you very much.
Brandon, may I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
When it is talked about the mission of the hospital authority, when I first came on board, before any of you were there was a mission statement. So as long as that statement is being followed, it is the mission of the board.
Or move on, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. New business, the Petroleum building demolition bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trustees will recall at our last meeting, we went through a list of items that we agreed should be part of the bid specifications for the demolition of the Bedoya building. In your agenda packet, you will see that those have now been incorporated into a specification list. The contract was not available at the time we published, but I have now received it. There are just a couple of tweaks that need to be made in those bid specs where it'll coincide with the contract, and it will be ready to be submitted and published. Having said that, what I really wanted to make you aware of is that the schedule that I am thinking we're going to make and be able to keep is the legal ads will run on April 15th and April 19th of this month. The pre-bid is going to be April 21st. Bids will be due May 2nd. And that allows us time to get them on your next agenda, the first meeting or your meeting in May on the 8th. So unless we run into unanticipated obstacles, you will have this on your May 8th agenda for award. Todd, did you have any comment you wanted to add about the contract or the bid spec?
I was gonna get with you to coincide the contract with the time requirements you had on. your-
Yeah, there's just a couple of tweaks, but it doesn't change anything material. And most of those that I've spoke to that are interested in bidding, they indicated to me that they thought it was probably wise to have the pre-bid close to the bid due date. In fact, some of them said when the out-of-town people come, they'll probably complete their bid and turn it in same day. So we think that schedule is reasonable, and that's what we propose to do, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Questions and comments?
Okay.
Don't need any action on that.
No action. I think everything so far is covered under previous actions. Mainly just want to keep y'all up to date as to where we're at, where you will know.
Consulting agreement with Powell Consulting.
It's obviously included in your agenda packet. You heard comments about it in the comment section. I think this is the same agreement that's already been approved by Columbia County, the Board of County Commissioners. Richard and his wife have sold their practice. They no longer do the audit work. They have a new party which owns that company. But they do wish to continue to be engaged and continue to do the financial services side of it. From my standpoint, I'm very glad to have Richard to contact and rely on. I think he's an excellent resource. As far as the structure of the agreement goes, I would have to allow Todd to make any comment on that may be necessary. But it's $125 hourly. And I believe that to be the market rate, the same rate that he's charging like and similar customers.
I don't have any legal issues with it. It's straightforward and outlines everything it needs to.
Questions and comments? This one. Will this take effect?
Just when it's signed. It's not retroactive, I promise you.
So whenever the audit time comes, then we would be going out.
You do need to, if it's on sign, the term would need to be modified. I think that's when he probably typed it up and sent it in.
That's it. And then so the worst thing, can't strike an initial.
Yeah.
One,
Make it April.
one and a half something.
Oh, you got, okay, mine is the old one, so. All right, perfect.
What's the dates, please? Give me dates.
April 10th. Today's date.
Okay, so it's a different one than I have.
Yeah, April 10th. The one that signed just being.
Yeah, you should have that copy today.
Okay, thank you.
Then we would. At some point need to look for auditing services, or do we still have a contract with?
We currently have a contract, needless to say, that we can issue an RFP and review it. I think all of the options under the previous extension. I need to check, Mr. Chairman.
But somebody's purchased that with the intent of continuing those services, I would assume.
Okay, so, the contract, as I'm very familiar with, it is a year-to-year option on the board. We've assigned those contracts to the new owners, but you're not obligated again. You have a year-to-year option, so you're not, so they intend to honor that contract, but the board can always do an RFP for all the services.
Okay.
And
And that's, I guess that's how I should have answered. They're intending to honor that contract.
and to honor it, I'm not affected financially, whether it's honored or extended or increased or decreased or anything. But it's the same option the board's had since 1908.
Well, they're currently working on the 2022 audit. It has not been delivered to you yet. So once that's delivered, that'd probably be an appropriate time if y'all would like to discuss whether we should issue a new RFP. We can talk about it at that time.
Their motion to accept the consulting agreement with Powell Consulting.
So moved.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Next, Mr. Chairman, is it's time for the renewal of the general liability policy for the authority. There is a proposed increase for the coming year. The total increase is $675, which makes it a 2.9% increase or a 3% increase rounded. The current year, the annual premium is $22,775. The renewal is $23,450. I do wish to remind the trustees that there is an exclusion in our current policy for firearms. I don't know that that's something that we need to really insure or not. I tend to think those are more opinions and legal questions. We are getting better as far as getting more options to look at for renewal. So our carrier did find one that would insure firearms and firearm related incidents. The problem is the premium goes up, not terribly bad, but it does go up. But the deductibles go up and then other coverages drop off. So there's neither one of those perfect. And I tend to believe that what we should do is renew with the existing carrier. And if in the opinion of the trustees or if in the opinion of the attorney, they do believe that the excluded coverages warrant some attention and there's an exposure that we really need to insure against, we can look at coverages for those exposures. But if you just do it in a package policy, you're giving up something to get the one that will give you the firearms coverage. So I can't see that that's putting us in any better position.
The other thing you have to look at is you're gonna be required, this sort of inconsistent to some degree, selection or rejection of the terrorism insurance coverage.
Yeah, which we always reject.
Yeah, just bringing that to your attention, because it seems like that would only apply then to an explosion and not a gun terrorism incident, because that'd be excluded.
I mean,
And probably, we can handle the liability coverage on any leases, if we do something with a hospital, something like that, we can have and require them to carry certain types of coverages and take care of it that way.
well, the bottom line, and this is sort of a repeat from years past when the insurance market got a little difficult. The days of having an all perils policy are gone. I mean, I can't find you a policy that covers all perils anywhere. I mean, every company's underwriting is different. So we try to fit our needs with whatever underwriter and whatever insurers policy best fits us. But if there's one that covers all perils out there, I've not seen it in years.
Legal question.
Mhm.
Should this building at every entrance have a sign that says absolutely at no time, no firearms permitted?
It would help. I mean, it certainly probably not
Be
gonna
noticed.
reduce your exposure, but at
Right.
least puts the public on notice of
Exactly.
that, especially with the new concealed carry,
Yes, that goes into effect July 1.
July 1.
I'd like for us to think about that, Mr. Williams.
Well, it's actually been suggested before
Oh.
and, in talking previously with legal, there wasn't a legal requirement to do it, but obviously if it gives attention, reminds people or whatever with the carry, the new changes in the law, it might be a good idea to do that. Nobody could have an excuse. Can I get a motion for the renewal?
I'd like to make a motion for the renewal. Without firearms at this point.
Todd, you can research that and let me know what you want me to do about it, okay?
I'll second.
Get a motion, a second, further discussion. All in favor, someone say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the motion carries.
One question, Mr. Williams, was the firearm exclusion in last year's policy? I don't have. a copy of
Yes,
that.
last year we had no coverage or the current year either.
Mr. Chair, may I address Mr. Williams? I would very much like for you to look into firearms coverage and see what it would cost us, because it's happening everywhere.
Understand, of course, even the firearms coverage now has a lot of exclusions.
Yeah.
So what I'll try to do is get you some insurance policy language to let you kind of at least get an idea of what you can expect. There's certain exposures even in that area that it's not going to cover anyway.
And you got the new tort reform law that the criminals can be held to their percentage of liability if
Yeah.
during the commission of a crime, which means absolutely nothing for the injured party, but nonetheless is.
All right, item number 4, contract with EM Towels.
Most of this is for Todd to comment on because he did prepare the lease as you directed him to. But before he begins, let me just advise you that this morning I had a conversation with Dr. White. Dr. White has received a copy of this proposed lease. They've taken it under advisement. They are discussing it. But needless to say, they had not gotten far enough along to say, I'm good with it or I have issues with it, but they are reviewing it. So I told Dr. White I would pass that along to you. Been received. They are taking it under advisement. In the meantime, I also told Dr. White while we were working on the lease, I wanted to make sure that we continued to work ahead with the other elements. So the next step is I've got to get meetings set up between Todd and the attorney for Dr. White. And so just because the lease is not yet resolved doesn't mean we're not going to go ahead and move forward. And so I asked Dr. White to please have his attorney furnish a schedule of availability where I could forward it to Todd, where they could start talking. Because there are some legal issues that they can discuss and address. And, it's beyond the administrative level. It's beyond me. So those things we need to get in discussions about those ASAP. I'm sorry, Todd.
Oh, no problem. Just
Put
gonna
all that
point
out.
out, as you recall, the Powell submitted their own proposed lease. It had a lot of carryover language related to the financial assistance agreement, the second component Mr. Williams was talking about. They tried to start bleeding one into the other. And so, I decided that instead of using theirs as a template, I would use a standard commercial lease, much like the ones we've used in the past. Incorporate what language that we didn't have an objection to from their proposed lease. But essentially, as we talked about at the last meeting, you know, the lease is going to be completely separate from any financial services or assistance agreement. And so we just drafted it as a standard commercial lease. There are no exhibits. We sent one over today, said Exhibit B to be determined, because they had if you'll recall, a 2-page list of equipment with an estimate within their proposed lease of $650,000. We don't yet have a up-to-date good inventory on what we have in the hospital that we could bring over. And certainly haven't gone out to price the other equipment they requested. And so there was no reason to retype their list, because it's going to change. Probably changed dramatically, but we do and are within our rights to own equipment and lease it. So it'll just be a matter of, through negotiations, determining what we have that we can provide that they're willing to use. And then what the trustees are willing to provide on top of that, that probably would have to be purchased. So that's why you don't have any specific exhibits, because there's nothing to put on them yet.
And I think too, Mr. Chairman, this is the appropriate time. The 17 pages that were mentioned earlier, I've never received 17 pages. Richard's already indicated he did not. I think it was said. I think that was said, but I think it was just misspoke in the conversation. It wasn't necessarily equipment. Maybe it was, they were talking about the whole agreement's about 17 pages. But there is not 17 pages of equipment. So two's as much as I could find.
I got it, so you don't play that to do, you send it on, say it. That's all.
All right.
One thing that I want us to think about and consider before we get to the end. I know there's going to be changes to this, but in section 1, back on page 2, the authority shall maintain the leased premises in good repair and condition. The PALs shall be responsible for any cleaning, maintenance, repair, and or replacement, reasonable wear and tear accepted caused by PALs or its employees or agents. I know this isn't as big of a nut as the main hospital building, but I want to make sure that we're very clear on this lease, who's responsible for what when it comes to maintenance and repairs. What is maintenance considered?
Yeah, because
to
they'll-
us, that's, and it can be, that can be determined, but I don't want to just be very vague and say, because in that sentence, the authority shall maintain the leased premises in good repair and condition. And the next one says that the PALs responsible for any cleaning, maintenance, repair, and or replacement. I know it says caused by PALs, but who's to determine that? So they need to spelled out very clearly.
I think,
Simple.
That's whatever's reasonable. There's none.
Brandon,
It's
I would say it has to be clear that they maintain medical equipment. That is a very expensive thing right there.
I think of the equipment,
If they blow an X-ray tube, it costs $10,000.
Wow.
I know in section 8C, they have to require and provide us with a copy of their maintenance.
Yeah.
We can, so we'll look at that one as far as tightening it up, number 1 and number 8.
But specifically stated that they have to maintain all medical equipment.
we do that, will there be some sort of oversight?
Yeah. I think that's exactly the feedback that Todd was looking for, because as he said, he based this on a general commercial lease. Okay? Please, all the trustees, any comments you have, make sure that Todd receives them, and I'm sure we'll get some back from the Whites also. So this is really his first stab at it. There'll be some changes made to the proposed lease.
I don't know if we can get Dwayne involved also. Like I said, I just don't want to end up like we did with CHS.
You want clear lines of understanding, and I
What
very much
maintenance-
appreciate that.
what maintenance is-
Sure.
My definition might be completely different than theirs.
Sure.
A probe for an ultrasound that's often dropped and has to be repaired can cost $500. Okay,
So what would be the next steps with Ian Pals?
Oh,
Get their comments, and then we should have, hopefully by the May meeting, that meeting done, and then we can get their feedback on, the analysis on what we can and can't do. I want to confer a little more with Mr. Powell. I've gotten a lot more legal research done on the constitutional prohibition. And the more you read, the more limited it gets. So I just want to, I've started a little list. So I'm going to get with him, and essentially, I think it's going to be easier to say what we can do than all the things we can't do relative to what their requests were. Because it's pretty limited. And then obviously by then we should have a revised draft of the lease, and then by then they should know kind of what our parameters are on the second aspect of it, and that may cause them to make a decision on the lease.
Is it? Excuse my ignorance. I mean, is it unusual to have a lease, like have it listed out? I mean, changing light bulbs and that type thing is,
I think it's a good idea, because and if you'll remember, their lease had us doing everything. Except the Friday cleaning.
And hey, if that's the case, that's fine, but then up at the very top of it, where it has the amount that it's gonna be adjusted on whatever those terms say, in my opinion. But I don't wanna get back in the same
I'll get
situation.
with Dwayne, we'll go through, I can get him to help me with a list of what he would anticipate potentially happening, and we can just include that in there.
There's
The
ways
more
to
the
do it.
better.
There's ways to do it where we are still taking care of it, but it's charged back to EM Pals. They pay for whatever that particular service is we're rendering to them. So.
well, and I too hope that MPALS has a preference, once they review it, that we can consider, so.
I wanna make sure the maintenance and repair part is still.
I think everybody that's been here any length of time at all will agree with that, but,
Any other questions or comments?
I'd really like to make sure that we're in charge of the exterior envelope. Just, head this off at the pass right now. Just put us in charge of the exterior envelope.
And I haven't been here that long, so excuse me, but also we might want to look at any possibility in this lease if we want to occupy any of the space for any particular reason.
sure. Yeah, and I think what Don is referring to is when we do start blending in the financial services aspect, that can and will affect Sonia and Cynthia, because point of service is important if we're going to expand and use our medical assistance program properly.
Great to have an office over there.
I mean, we've got to put, when you talk to any of these other authorities, and, one thing they don't have that we do is geographic space between where the service is provided and the people are actually getting qualified.
But could we train some people that they hire?
Well, I think, Miss Laurie, in the big picture, you're gonna have to, because the hours of operation are going to far exceed what we're doing. I would fully expect them to, so, you know, when we get into that financial services part of it, as long as they can show us that they've collected the supporting documentation and material, if they qualify somebody for aid and support under the authority, we would accept that, as long as the paperwork is there to support it.
Well, I think that the way to handle that would be we train them. Because they're gonna have to handle that with the other insurances anyway.
Sure.
So they have to have a person for that.
Well, I have had very limited conversation with Dr. White, but I have had some conversation with Dr. White about that need. So it's not completely foreign to them, and it is something we need to talk about.
Anything else?
No, sir.
All right. Update on the contract with Meridian.
Well, unlike meetings in the past, we do have things we can report, so this is good. The initial meeting with Meridian, I thought was very good. Don brought his legal team. I thought their legal team was very competent. I think everybody met in the spirit of cooperation. I think both parties made it very clear they want to see this be successful and work. But no matter what we say and do, there are legal issues involved in that. So where this was left is there were things that we were asked to get explanation and support for. And of course, we did the same with them. There's going to be weekly meetings. Now, they missed the first week because conflicts of schedule, but we have to get everybody on the calendar in order for it to work weekly. There is a conference Wednesday with Meridian, and so it'll pick back up. But I think everybody was cooperative, and I don't think there was one issue in that initial meeting that wasn't put on the table. That's my opinion, but if it was, it's an unknown issue to me. But we talked about the lease, we talked about restrictions, we talked about the dedication by deed, we talked about, you know, those things, services to be provided, limitation of those services. All that's out on the table, and I don't think it was a surprise to anybody. And of course, both Richard and Todd were there representing the hospital authority. And if you have a different opinion, please share it. But I'm optimistic, and you know, we still got a little ways to go. But I hope these weekly meetings keep it fresh on everybody's mind. And the way I did that from the authority end is it doesn't matter if I can't be there, for example, we're still going to have the meeting. I trust Richard and I trust Todd, and they can certainly fill me in with anything that may be discussed. I'm just giving an example. We need these meetings to occur on a regular basis, on a set schedule, and let's get this done.
So you're expecting to start renovations in June?
Yeah, well, you know, here's the funny thing about all that. The more you talk, I mean, the more work you can create, and I'm guilty of this. I brought the ER back up. You know, in my mind, I'm not ready to let go of that. But the good news is let's say that is a possibility. Meridian was all about it. Meridian was very supportive of that. Hey, we can work out something with y'all, you know? So I'm only mentioning it from the standpoint to show the level of cooperation. If y'all decide y'all need that for medical services to be provided in the county, we can work that out. So I thought it was good. I really did. Very positive.
Any update on the reverter clause?
We sent a letter to the fund and I sent it for any potential revisions or suggestions to their real estate attorney. They brought more of the contract negotiating attorney and then the real estate attorney. And so he and I are working on getting the fund title insurance company to give us an idea of not only what it requires to handle the reverter and its validity, but also even requested that please let us know how we need to phrase or construct the document that the current entity of the Masonic Lodge can deal with the 1950, whatever year it was that came into an existence. So we've requested sort of a comprehensive review, asking it in the form of a commitment. So we were gonna deed it to ABC. This, and we wanted insurance on it. The fund, as far as the reverter clause for right now, would tell me this is what you have to do, A, B, C, and D. And then they felt comfortable with getting that opinion. So
And we also, above and beyond that, not to put all the eggs in one basket, talked about just the lease.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah,
We're
we,
still talking about,
like I say, I really don't think there was anything that wasn't put on the table in that initial meeting. I mean, we're, you know, we think we can do this. Either or, we think that the outcome to the Meridian Behavioral Health Care is kept. Richard gave them some information about long-term leases, financing improvements, all that good stuff. So they've got a lot of information they can weigh and consider. But, you know, very hopeful on my end.
questions, comments? So, moving on, I won't ask Cynthia to read the staff report, but I got a comment on it. Is there anything? I know we've talked about working on the program to
Yeah.
adjust it, make it. See if it's able to be more accessible.
I will try to have that complete and on the May agenda. And just where you'll know, for the most part, I'm not reinventing the wheel to a great extent. I'm modeling Shands Healthcare's assistance policy. And I have discussed that with Richard also. He has got some familiarity with it. But we'll talk about it. We'll go through the finer points of it at the appropriate time. But it is a significant change from what we're doing now, particularly in the area of assets. And I don't know how y'all collectively feel about that, but that is what I would say is the most significant change.
And that's what's keeping people from being qualified as well.
It's a big impediment.
Well, people coming in, Brandon, just so I can say, these people do not have assets. If I have 100 people to come in right now, you may have one person that may have assets, but that's not what's holding people up. When the hospital closed, people think everything closed down here.
Yeah.
And we have a few that's faithful about coming back because they need their medication. But the others, after they see the doctors a few times, they're just not coming back for whatever reason. Perhaps they moved, they died, or got on Medicaid or Medicare. But every month, the numbers are dropping. I'll call people, I'm coming back. They have not returned. But
If we have medical
the
services
assets-
on campus.
yeah, but the assets is not a holdup. And when I tell you, over the years being here, I bet I've only had 10 people that perhaps had land that was given that held them back 10. And I've been here almost 14 years, so you can remodel that and that's not gonna hold people up from coming. And now you have Florida Blue out here that will give people insurance that they're telling untruths on there, saying they're gonna have a job and they will qualify. You say, Brandon, are you gonna be working next year? The people will qualify and say, yes, I'll be working next year. And people have called me and said, hey, I qualify, but I really don't have paycheck. It's like, well, you lied. You shouldn't have told them that. So people are just not coming back for whatever the reason.
Can you get Ian Powell's in here?
I'm
And
hoping
then we
that-
start cycling through, I think a lot of these problems will start fleshing themselves out.
They will.
They'll be able to point us in the right direction.
Well, we have to remember now, we publish the guidelines in advance. What we don't know is how many people read them and say, I don't even want to go apply because I can't meet that. So the explanation don't really account for that. We have no way to track that. The other problem with the program is the income. It's not so much the limits, but look, you can lose your job, come in to apply for our program, and you're gonna get denied because it's based on a 12-month history as far as income goes. Well, I'll be the first to say some people don't manage their money well, but on any given day, if they don't have money and they need medical services and they don't qualify for other programs, they're not gonna qualify for us either, because it's based on a 12-month window. So we're trying, I mean, we're aware of these things and we're trying to address them and address them fairly and address them like other entities have addressed them. So that's kind of what we're doing, but I will try to have you a draft at the very least by your first meeting or your only meeting in May.
Yes, Ms. Chin.
If the board would be so inclined, I would like to meet with Dwayne and go through the hospital and see if there's anything worth salvaging. And the things that aren't, seeing if we can sell them.
Is there anything holding us up with Meridian though, or they wanting any of that also?
They do, and you know, that's really been the only issue with getting rid of the surplus equipment. I mean, some of it we think we're going to use with Impals, and then we know we're going to use some of it with Meridian. And I don't know what's going to be used and what's not. See, I was even told one time that like something is predominant over there as a bed, we wouldn't be using for Meridian because they required a different kind of bed. And then I heard, no, that's not true. I don't know at this point, but we don't want to sell all the beds if they're going to need them, for an example. So,
Well, we could make a list of what we've got.
yeah, well, we do have the old inventory, which of course was prepared. And a lot of that, I don't even know what that stuff's for. I really don't.
But I would like to go over there and see what can be recycled. Because there's a lot of stuff over there that can't,
Yeah.
but it can be sold. Like there's one X-ray tube over there. That GE equipment cannot be repaired because it's just kind of hanging down. But it is salvageable.
Yeah.
Because it'll be replaced. If somebody comes and buys it, it's replacement parts for somebody else. It's all it's worth.
Well, and you know, we've had people call, I know at least 3 different companies call, they wanted to go to the kitchen and make a bed and just gut the kitchen. Well, you know, they got to have the kitchen, but they wanted to buy the dishwashers, the serving lines. They wanted to buy the pots, the pans, the mixers, the stove, you name it. Can't do that.
The other comments, Ms. Chin, board member comments?
No, but I'm just asking the board permission to do that.
Yeah.
Can do anything? Anybody? All right, we exhausted the agenda, we'll adjourn.